being how do we take the ancient wisdom of Christian theology and indeed the ancient wisdom of many traditions and bring them into conversation with contemporary and future challenges and opportunities. So I would like to welcome Professor Wayne Hudson to come and speak to us as a way of launching this exhibition.
Now, this exhibition, Eleison, is, I think, more difficult than most of Michael's recent work, and it's partly, I think, that he's done something very amazing in creating not only 8 panels, but I would say a symphonic process. And I think it's useful to look at these as flowing into each other. Flowing into each other, forming a kind of symphonic. There's a temptation to pick the last one, say I really like it, and then someone puts up their hand and says he declined. Well, sure, but that's not how we should see it. We should see the work as a whole, as a symphony in which there's a process, in which symbols develop and earlier things change their meaning when later things are seen. That Michael is really an important Australian artist of great originality. And to take in his work, we have to stretch a bit. We have to move outside our comfort zone, and we must be careful not to put on it the labels that people who don't know might. Because Michael is not only an photographer, he's an original artist. And he's working, as you know, with the Serbian Orthodox tradition, renewing it, but he's doing it for a purpose. He's not doing it just so that it sits on the church wall. As Peter just said, it's very much about theology plus ancient wisdom brought to the contemporary situation in all its horror as a way forward. Michael is a contemporary artist addressing contemporary problems, but with a heart that is sensitive to the richness of a much older tradition. Now, this exhibition, Eleison, is, I think, more difficult than most of Michael's recent work, and it's partly, I think, that he's done something very amazing in creating not only 8 panels, but I would say a symphonic process. First of all, obviously, there's a strong emphasis on apocalypse in these works. There's a strong emphasis on the idea that our world may be about to destroy itself. Yes, it's about September 11, but September 11 is seen, I think, as an eschatological sign of a deeper faith of our world. And at the same time, there's reference to hope. But again, it's eschatological hope. That is, it's not, I'm hopeful that things will get better, but it's a kind of living faith that in the end. Lastly, there's a hope running through Michael's work in this exhibition. He is concerned to point to everything that is worrying and frightening and dark and threatening. But there's a sense of hope. But it's not just hope, because it's hope that the divine will be seen. He's not hopeful in human beings. He's not hopeful that social change will do it. It's Kyrie Eleison, Lord have mercy. And it's not only this, but it's the hope that the divine mercy will be seen. Difficult ideas, not easy to follow. Once you enter the process, you will feel it. And when you feel it, you will have the hope. It is in us. Thank you very much.
Just outside of that body work, with the painting you have there, which is called Angel by the Tomb, which again is the extrapolation, if you like, the excerpt from the scene, the myrrh-bearing women by the Tomb of Christ. And it's a very famous fresco in the Serbian culture, in the Serbian medieval tradition. And many of us, we tried to copy, to replicate it, and obviously I was one of them, of course. But after some decades, I kind of dared myself making variations, contemporary renditions of it, and I'm particularly pleased with that particular one. for all. That piece came out of nowhere, in a sense, nowhere known, not only to the people who know me and reading my work, but to me myself. And it is so bad that I don't even know what to think about it. I would like to explore more along those lines and see whether it takes us somewhere that I wanted to kind of reduce many details and much of the thinking about life and everything else into some sort of elements. Any other questions, please?
Michael, I was wondering if you had a favourite and if so, why?
They are also very different, and they were kind of intentionally done so there is maybe some sort of sympathy, togetherness about them. I honestly don't know. Several of them I am very surprised that I was able to, and I'm deeply convinced that that something helped me to do it in preserving the old, preserving the traditional, not letting go, and yet dabbling in the contemporary and in the future as much as it is possible. Yes, this artwork is based on a photograph in the aftermath of September 11, wherein two figures, silhouetted figures on a photograph, are looking through the windows, or several windows if you like, seeing the rubble and the ruins and the destruction through those windows, the dust and everything else in the aftermath, as I said. And so they are probably talking the logistics and debating how to start the cleaning and how to deal with the rubble and how best to use their energy. So instead of just replicating the photograph as it is, which looked dramatic and interesting enough, I decided to come up with a concept like this, wherein I placed different scenarios, a different narrative in each one of those 6 segments, and wanted to kind of spice up to give certain richness to the whole thing that I afterwards decided to call Lo and Behold, giving it pretty much a biblical kind of a feel. So here we have an interesting situation wherein in the upper left corner we have one of the riders of Apocalypse that is announcing death, and diagonally down there in the bottom right corner we have a medieval rendition of a dramatic event of the descent or descent from the cross, or deposition from the cross, as my version of a Greek fresco from the 14th century. And in one of the photographs that I archived over years about the event, September 11, I found a man who is hammering something, working on something, as I said, aftermath, trying to clean and clear and do something constructive with what's left from the explosions and the towers ruination, and I thought it would be appropriate and interesting to involve or integrate, if you like, this silhouette in the whole artwork. And I could not, by the same token, I could not resist by adding the famous bull's head from Picasso's Guernica, the
place where I was personally in, that I visited, a place which was heavily bombarded in 1937 and made Picasso come up with the most famous, if not the best, war artwork of all times. I keep on paying homage, paying tribute to the medieval masters, both from the East and from the West. One of the greatest of all times is Beato Angelico, or Fra Angelico, the Dominican monk. So in this particular piece, called Homage to Fra Angelico, we have the situation of an excerpt, if you like, a detail of Fra Angelico's Lamentation of Christ, a most wonderful piece of his, juxtaposed to the, again, graphic, gory, horrific, brutal images of destruction of September 11. The presence of big, huge presence, basically, of ornamental decorative elements, especially in frescoes. Some on the icons as well, but especially on frescoes in the monasteries and churches of the Middle Ages. We are talking especially the golden time for icons and frescoes, 13th, 14th, and even 15th century. So it looks rather probably incongruous when we see like a chessboard, black and white squares, or down here really some sort of a squiggly decorative elements, but they are directly taken as they are in those medieval monasteries in Europe, in Serbia, Greece, Russia. And they look probably very modern, and that's why I use the word incongruous. But that is another kind of point in my thinking about the medieval art, that at times it looks incredibly bold, modern, innovative, creative, to the point that we are now in the 21st century, at least hugely surprised when we see some sort of renditions which defy credibility. When I thought about conceiving this body of work inspired by September 11 event, I didn't think much about, if you like, bigger picture, or I didn't have any prophetic or philosophical thoughts about destruction on a larger scale. I didn't think about the future of the earth or anything like this. I was just focused narrowly to the September 11 at the time, and then a little bit later working on the first testing pieces for the big body of work. I realized that it is not actually the September 11 that should be in focus as the only and the most important event of the sort, but it should be only a representational, symbolic of all events of that sort, as like symbols of a destruction, of harm, hostility, negativity that we humans do unto others, other human beings, to each other. This is the first morning after that opening, which gives me time and little distance to think about the opening and the whole body of work, how it looks in the new setting, meaning new for me, because for me it is also the first time that I can see all of those things, all of those works put together, displayed properly, in good light, with good spacing. I can say that it was probably the best feeling or feel that I had ever during my many exhibitions in many amiable crowd who respected a lot of the works that they were seeing.